Anthony Carboni back here at the PlayStation booth live, E3 2015, with Willy Chyr, the creator of Relativity. Welcome, sir. I was playing this a little bit on the floor before day one. I flagged you down and got some time on this, and I absolutely loved it. This thing is mind-bending. Tell us a little bit about what Relativity is.
So Relativity, I call it a counterfactual physics game, which is that it asks the question.
Oh, no, that explains it. You don't have to go any further.
It's basically asking, like, what if the fundamental rules of physics were different?
Okay.
Yeah. So here we have we can, like, change gravity and walk on surfaces.
Okay, so here we have, we've got Justin playing backstage here. And he just hit R2 and just swapped gravity, so the wall is now the floor.
Yeah.
Okay.
So whatever floor is colored, that's your down at the moment.
Gotcha. It's an awesome look.
Yeah, it was inspired by architectural hand drawings. So like I wanted that look to make it look like schematics and to look like it was hand drawn.
Yeah, sort of give it a feeling of like unfinished, so you feel like you can go wherever in it.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So as we're going around here, you know, we're obviously seeing some pretty simple stuff in the beginning, where we're finding out how like switches work, how the gravity shift works. What kind of stuff are we seeing as we're moving forward in the game here?
Yeah, so right now we're just, you know, teaching you the basics of the rule. Like one thing I really wanted to do in making this game is not have any dialogue explaining stuff. So really the only thing you see is the button prompt to let you know which button to press. But it's teaching you, okay, you can only use yellow boxes when you're in yellow gravity.
Gotcha.
You can only use blue boxes when you're in blue gravity. And because all of that eventually is going to play a role in how the puzzles work in the game.
Sure. So yeah, so we just flip to the blue floor. And I noticed that every block has sort of an arrow on it, letting me know which way it wants to fall.
Right, so it also tells you, like, a lot of times people ask, well, how do I know what colors are the different walls? And here it's like, I know that's a green wall because the arrow on the green switch is pointing that way.
Gotcha. So constantly trying to orient you, which is kind of crazy because when I was playing it, I did at first kind of get this whole thing. Like, Justin's about to go and grab one of these blocks. He's going to go for the purple block. And it's funny, like, I will set the purple block down and flip and feel like it's going to try to slide somewhere that it's not going to slide because I'm trying to wrap my head around how the whole gravity changes.
It definitely takes a while to get used to because this is just not how the way the world works.
Right.
And then one thing that makes this game very difficult, I think, to talk about is there's no objective up. Like, I can't say go up, right? It doesn't really mean anything in this world.
Just go yellow.
Right, so here
you can see that he's kind of like putting things on one stair at a time to sort of show us how it's moving.
Exactly, because you can't go into another gravity while carrying this orange box.
Okay.
So you have to place it up, switch to blue, and then switch back to orange.
Gotcha.
Without this constraint, there wouldn't be any puzzles.
Right. And it's funny because it's such a simple rule set, but it makes something like, well, I've got to just get up this tiny ledge. How am I going to flip everything around and get up this ledge?
Yeah. So this next puzzle that's coming up is sort of my favorite in the game because it shows you how the different gravities work together. Like, we've already learned that we can put a box on a square and that opens a door. But here, if you put the purple box on the square and let go, it just slides down.
Right.
Right? So we switch into blue, and then we can place the blue box next to, it's not below, it's next to the square. Then when we go back to purple, we can now put the purple box on top of the blue box.
Right.
And now it's acting as a shelf and letting you...
It's so funny. The first time I played that, I knew I kind of had to do it, but I was really afraid that the blue was going to slide. And it's funny, like, reorienting your brain to think about how this is going to work. And once you get it, it's one of those games where once you understand the little bit that the new room is teaching you, you just feel like a genius. You feel like you just accomplished something incredible.
Yeah, you know, I had studied physics. That was my background. And I actually wanted, like, I want every puzzle in this game to make you feel like you were solving a physics problem.
Gotcha.
Like, you're learning the rule, and now you're applying it and feeling like a scientist.
So this is awesome. So he's using the green one as sort of like a miniature shelf again.
Right.
To keep the red in place.
Yeah, so it's building on the previous one, except now we can reach down from the top to then grab it and complete sort of this lift upwards.
That's nuts. I love that. And it's great because so far we're working with single color, single switch, kind of figuring out how everything works. I remember this room scared me. I was very intimidated because I felt like I was going to have to flip this room 100,000 times and like walk along the branches of that tree. Right. And then it was just like, no, maybe you could just grab it though.
Yeah. So basically, it turns out that these boxes are actually fruit that grow on a tree. And this is a kind of a mechanic that becomes important later on.
Oh, wow.
And then we get outside. So all that we went through right now was just a bit of tutorial to get you familiar with the mechanics. And this is really where the main game happens.
Now, this is where some really interesting stuff starts happening. Because we now know that there is no objective up or down.
Right.
Which in a room lets me know that I can walk anywhere in the room. But then when you're in this open world, the first thing you think is like, well, what happens when I fall?
Right. And I think, well, so we can grab another box and place on the switch, but I think in a moment we will take a leap and answer that question, like, what happens?
So this whole world is designed to cycle infinitely.
Yes. Yeah, because like a really, I mean, an important design philosophy for me is that everything you see, I want you to be able to get to.
Yeah.
But by having the world wrap around, that means that I can accommodate for that, right? Without having to create really infinite. So it's an interesting, it's like, are there really infinite instances, or is it the same one that's going around?
Right.
Like, is it you that's repeating, or is there another you that's above that jumps, then when you jump, he jumps?
Yeah, and there's like equal numbers of dude. Yeah, okay. Yeah. All right. But it's crazy because you can now make these leaps to these sections that look impossible to get to just by sort of falling and looping or infinitely instancing or whatever you want to call it, to where like I can't reach Orange World now, but if I loop through this world 3 times going at an angle, I'm going to hit it.
And that's exactly the kind of thinking that I want you to have, especially later on in the game. For example, if there's a ledge really high up and you want to get a box up there, that's too high for you to reach, but you remember, well, actually it's also below me, so instead of trying to climb up, I can just jump down, and that gets me there as well.
And I can just picture, as we get later on here, based on these things, levels where I have to leave a box here, I have to fall 3 or 4 times, go over this other section, maybe like use this other box to help, and then jump back to where I was. And it feels like you're going to be juggling some very interesting things.
Yeah, and so right now we're going to jump and see some like other levels that are just much crazier based on this same idea of infinity and worlds repeating. So
oh my gosh.
This is a level that was inspired by Indian stepwells. And usually they go down and there's water, there's an end to it. And I saw that pattern and I was like, what if it just kept going down forever? And so, and we're using that same mechanic of the world wrapping, but it allows us to create spaces like this. And so much of the game also is about our relationship. I used to be an installation artist before starting this game.
Okay.
And so a lot of like the stuff I'm interested in is how our perception of space changes how we relate to ourselves and how we move around.
And it's so funny because when you first see the infinite steps and you're going down them, it kind of blows your mind one way, and then you remember, oh, I can flip this and I can turn it so the steps are now the wall, and now I'm looking infinitely at something completely different, and you just have these little moments of wow when you're switching around. Now, some of these worlds that you're showing us are not fully formed levels with puzzles and stuff yet, because you were telling me that you're kind of, in certain cases, starting with spaces that you want to play with, and then sort of bringing in the puzzle aspects later.
Yeah, I mean, when I was developing the game, like I knew I had to have really strong puzzles, a really strong core. So for a long time, the game was just a sequence of puzzles room. It looked really ugly, but I tested them and I knew they were great. And once I had that down, I started focusing on the aesthetics and started focusing on the architecture. And I think in the final game, it won't just be a series of rooms. It's going to be a series of puzzle rooms. Instead, it's going to be broken up by exploring mega structures. And then you go in a room and you recognize that I didn't realize I could do this before with the gravity. And then maybe later you realize there's like a macrocosm of that same thing outside.
So we're going to see the sort of switch puzzles that we saw before, but we're also going to see sort of exploration of space as a puzzle in itself.
Yeah. And part of it is like you'll have to recognize patterns. You recognize that the world wraps around, And so the people ask me how many puzzles are there in the game.
Yeah.
And it's a tough problem to answer because my puzzles aren't always inside a room. Like I could count the number of rooms, but some of these puzzles involve stuff inside the room as well as the entire space. It's like they're almost fractions of things.
This is going to break a million brains, I think, Willy.
That is my intention.
It's gonna break them and put them back together. This particular megastructure is just absolutely mind-blowing to me. So you are still developing right now.
Yes.
You're still making tweaks and adding new worlds and things like that. When do you think we're going to see Relativity?
I am looking to release it in 2016.
Okay.
So basically the first 2.5 years were just prototyping ideas and me. I didn't know what the game was about, and I finally figured that out. I know how to make it. Like I know what the design of it should be, but right now we're sort of, dealing with tech problems, just rewriting everything with knowing what it's going to be.
Gotcha.
So cleaning that up, yeah.
And you're targeting PS4 for this?
Yes.
Awesome. Willy Chyr, thank you so much for coming. If they want to find out more about the game, where can they go?
They can go to the website. It's relativitygame.com, or they can follow me on Twitter, Willy Chyr, WILLYCHYR. I've also kept a devlog that's it's like a journal over a year and a half of how this game has evolved to what it is now.
I definitely want to see that.
PlayStation